Let's fill out the 2026 gubernatorial map using the latest prediction market odds from Kalshi. Of the 36 governor's races on next year's ballot, Republicans are favored at better than 90% in 11 states, and Democrats in 8. That includes, believe it or not, Pennsylvania. According to Kalshi, Democrats have a 92% chance to hold the governorship there. Traders are clearly bullish on Josh Shapiro, and with good reason. He's running for re-election 4 years after his 2022 landslide, the largest margin for a non-incumbent Pennsylvania governor in more than 70 years. He was also the first candidate for any office to top 3 million votes in the Keystone States. Yes, his opponent, Doug Mastriano, was a notably weak nominee, but Shapiro has maintained strong approval ratings and consistently ranks among the nation's most popular governors. Pennsylvania is one of the country's purest swing states, 3 straight presidential races decided by less than 2 points. But next year's governor's race will be off-cycle from the presidency and likely in a Democratic-leaning environment. Historically, the party out of power performs well in midterms, especially the first after a new president takes office. The latest generic ballot polling average backs that up, with Democrats leading by nearly 4 points nationally. All of that lines up with Kalshi's odds. I'll drop the market links in the description and comments so you can make your own call if you think those numbers are too high. Bottom line, Democrats have 8 safe states with 90% plus odds. Republicans have 11, and that leaves 17 states without a rating, places where each party has at least a 10% chance to win. So let's go through them, starting out west and moving east. First up is Oregon. Democratic Governor Tina Kotek is widely expected to win re-election, and likely by a wider margin than in 2022. That year, she became Oregon's 7th consecutive Democratic governor, but did so with just 47% of the votes, thanks in large part to the baggage left behind by former Governor Kate Brown's deeply unpopular administration. Kotek herself struggled with low approval ratings in her first few years, but that's turned around. According to Morning Consult's latest quarterly update, she's now 11 points above water, her best standing yet, and for the first time, she's no longer ranked among America's most unpopular governors. Kalshi's markets reflect that improvement, giving Democrats an 81% chance of holding the Oregon governorship. That's strong enough to rate Oregon as likely Democrat on our map. Next is Nevada, one of the many presidential battlegrounds home to a competitive race for governor as well. Republican Governor Joe Lombardo enters 2026 with a strong approval rating and plans to run for re-election, riding the momentum of a significant rightward shift in the state's politics. Trump carried Nevada by over 3 points in 2024, becoming the first Republican to win the state at the presidential level since 2004. Lombardo's own win in 2022, when he unseated then Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak, was one of the earliest signs that Nevada was trending red. On the Democratic side, the frontrunner is likely Attorney General Aaron Ford. He'll face competition from Washoe County Commissioner Alexis Hill, and Republicans would welcome a contested primary, giving Lombardo extra space to build his war chest and sharpen his message. Even without that advantage, Lombardo starts the race as a narrow favorite. Kalshi's markets currently give Republicans a 51% chance of holding the governorship, which translates to a tilt Republican rating on our map. But if Democrats see a strong national wave in 2026, Ford could absolutely ride that momentum to victory in one of the most competitive states in the country. Then we've got Arizona, another core presidential battleground, this one currently held by Democrat Katie Hobbs. Hobbs sits around the middle of the pack in approval ratings and first won the governorship in 2022 by narrowly defeating Kari Lake. Of course, Lake turned out to be a deeply flawed candidate, a point reinforced by her poor performance in the 2024 Senate race. For 2026, Republicans are choosing between Congressman Andy Biggs and former gubernatorial candidate Karen Taylor Robson. Both received co-endorsements from Donald Trump earlier this year. Robson would almost certainly be the stronger general election candidate, while Biggs could face real challenges statewide, given his position as one of the most conservative members of the House. Arizona voters have consistently rejected far-right candidates in recent cycles, most notably Kari Lake and Blake Masters. Yet it is still Biggs who is leading according to both the polls and the prediction markets. He has led Taylor Robson by more than 20 points in all 4 public surveys, and according to the Republican primary market on Kalshi, he has about a 60% chance of winning. That dynamic is helping Hobbs in the general election. The prediction markets currently give Democrats a 61% chance of holding the governorship, though that's actually the lowest it's been since Kalshi started tracking earlier this year. So for now, Arizona lands in the tilt Democrat column on our map. Next up is Alaska, a state that's always unique in its politics. Incumbent Governor Mike Dunleavy is retiring, and Alaska uses a top 4 jungle primary with ranked choice voting. That means every candidate, regardless of party, runs together in next August's primary. The top 4 advance to the general election, and if no one clears 50%, ranked choice decides the winner. Right now, the Republican frontrunner is Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom. But if Senator Lisa Murkowski jumps in, she'd become the favorite as her moderate profile plays well in a ranked choice system. On the Democratic side, former state Senator Tom Begich, part of Alaska's well-known Begich political family, has declared his candidacy. But if former Congresswoman Mary Peltola enters the race, she'd be favored right alongside Murkowski, though for now, she looks more interested in a Senate run. So a lot remains unsettled. Unfortunately, Kalshi doesn't have a market for this race yet, so I'm going with my own probability. I give Republicans about an 80 to 90% chance, which puts this in the likely Republican category on the map. Up next is New Mexico. Incumbent Democrat Michelle Lujan Grisham is retiring, and the heavy favorite to replace her is former Congresswoman and Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. Republicans haven't won a statewide race here in over a decade, so it'll be tough for them to field a truly competitive candidate. Kalshi gives Democrats an 85% chance of holding the seat, good enough for a likely Democratic rating on the map. Now over to Kansas, which stands out as Republicans' best flip opportunity. Democratic Governor Laura Kelly is term limited after 2 terms. She first flipped the seat in 2018, riding the national blue wave and backlash against former Republican Governor Sam Brownback's deeply unpopular tenure. Then in 2022, she managed a narrow re-election win, thanks to her strong approval ratings and the momentum from Kansas voters rejecting efforts to restrict abortion rights. But with Kelly off the ballot, Republicans are in a much stronger position in this Trump plus 16 states. Former Governor Jeff Colyer and Secretary of State Scott Schwab have already emerged as top contenders. At this stage, I wouldn't be surprised if the race trends closer to safe Republican by Election Day. For now, though, the prediction markets give Republicans about a 76% chance of winning, lower than I expected, but still enough for a likely Republican rating on the map. Now, before we continue, let me take this second to remind you to subscribe to my channel below. It's completely free, and it helps me make more videos like these in the future. Right now, YouTube analytics are telling me less than 20% of my viewers are subscribed. Again, just hit that button below. It's free. Thanks so much. In Iowa, Republican Governor Kim Reynolds is retiring. Normally, losing an incumbent would be a problem for a party, but in this case, it might actually help Republicans. Reynolds is currently the most unpopular governor in the country by a wide margin. Morning Consult's latest tracker has her at just 42% approval and 49% disapproval, a net -7 rating, 9 points worse than any other governor in America. That opens the door for Democrats who are likely to nominate State Auditor Rob Sand, the only Democrat to win statewide in Iowa this decade and a strong candidate on paper. If not for Iowa's sharp rightward shift, Democrats would be well positioned here, but the state is deep red now. Trump carried it by 13 points, and Republicans are still favored with a 71% chance of holding the governorship in 2026. That puts Iowa in the lean Republican column on our map. over to Minnesota, where Democratic Governor Tim Walz is expected to run for a third term, fresh off his national spotlight. Walz isn't the strongest incumbent from an electability standpoint, but the advantage of incumbency, combined with Minnesota's reliable blue lean, gives him the edge. Kalshi currently puts Democrats at an 86% chance, which is edging towards safe territory, but for now, we'll call it likely Democratic. Sticking in the Great Lakes region, Wisconsin just had a major shakeup. Democratic Governor Tony Evers announced he won't seek re-election, a big blow to his party since he would have been a clear favorite. His lieutenant governor, Sarah Rodriguez, has already jumped in, while other big Democratic names are weighing runs, including former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, who's widely expected to declare. On the Republican side, former Governor Scott Walker has ruled out a comeback, leaving Congressman Tom Tiffany as the most notable Republican so far. Wisconsin, of course, is as evenly divided as it gets. 5 of the last 7 presidential races here were decided by less than a point, including each of the last 3. Trump most recently carried it by less than 1%. Both of the last 2 U.S. Senate races also decided by under a point. So it's no surprise that prediction markets give Democrats only a slim edge, 62% right now, down significantly since Evers' retirement. That makes Wisconsin a lean Democratic race on our map. Michigan tells a very similar story. The state's partisan lean is also even, and with Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer term limited, this race is expected to be one of the most competitive in the country. On the Democratic side, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson looks like the frontrunner for the nomination, and she'd be a strong general election candidate, but Republicans landed their best news of the cycle when Congressman John James announced his run for governor back in April. James is about as strong a candidate as Republicans could hope for in Michigan, effectively canceling out the edge Democrats would normally enjoy as the incumbent party. Then there's the wild card, independent Mike Duggan, the longtime mayor of Detroit. Unlike most big city mayors, Duggan is genuinely popular, and his statewide name recognition gives a substantial base of support. In fact, he's polling around 20% in the 4 surveys that have tested a 3-way race with Benson and James. Benson has led in all 4, but her margin was 5 points or less in each of the last 3. Kalshi currently gives Democrats just under a 70% chance, clearly suggesting that traders expect Duggan to siphon more votes from James than from Benson. For now, Michigan joins Wisconsin as lean Democratic on the map. Now, over to Ohio, which has followed the same path as Iowa, shifting sharply right over the past 2 decades. Once a core part of the Obama coalition, Ohio backed Trump by 8 points in 2016 and then again by wide margins in 2020 and 2024. Looking to 2026, Republican Governor Mike DeWine is term limited, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy is widely expected to be the GOP nominee, but he may prove to be a weaker general election candidate. On the Democratic side, the biggest name in play is former Congressman Tim Ryan, who has statewide experience from his 2022 Senate run, where he lost to J.D. Vance by 6 points. Ryan is expected to announce a decision later this summer. As of now, Kalshi gives Republicans a 69% chance of holding Ohio, though Ryan's entrance could narrow that margin. For the moment, we're calling Ohio a lean Republican state on the map. That leaves just 6 states to go, and we'll start in Georgia before wrapping up in the Northeast. With Republican Governor Brian Kemp term limited, this race, much like Michigan, is shaping up to be one of the marquee contests of the cycle. Georgia is still one of the most competitive states in presidential politics, and after its historic blue flip in 2020, it was among the least moved by Trump in 2024. But at the state level, Republicans have the advantage. In the 2022 midterms, they swept every statewide office, winning by margins of 5 to 10 points, even in a national environment that leaned Democratic. They also maintain full control of the state legislature. As for 2026, both primaries are wide open. On the Republican side, Attorney General Chris Carr and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones are already in the race, with Jones more likely to receive the critical Trump endorsement and thus the clear favorite according to Kalshi's Republican nomination market. On the Democratic side, former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is the biggest name in the field so far, but she's been out fundraised by State Senator Jason Estevez, who's also currently favored according to the prediction markets. Long story short, the general election outlook is very murky right now, with no meaningful polling in either primary, and that's reflected in the odds here as it's a dead heat coin flip according to the latest numbers via Kalshi. Georgia goes promptly in the toss-up column as a result. Alrighty, let's wrap things up in the Northeast, where there are plenty of unusual cases. Starting in Rhode Island, Democratic Governor Daniel McKee isn't in a great spot. His approval sits at just 45%, with 40% disapproving, a net of +5, making him one of the 5 least popular governors in the country. That vulnerability has already shifted Sabato's crystal ball rating to likely Democrat, suggesting both a competitive primary and the possibility of a real general election fight. Still, as is often the case in deep blue states like Rhode Island, Republicans probably won't field a strong enough candidate to capitalize. Kalshi's odds currently give Democrats an 82% chance of holding the seat, so another likely Democratic rating here. Next up, New York, historically one of the bluest states in the country, but no longer the safe haven Democrats once took for granted. Between 2020 and 2024, New York posted the largest pro-Trump swing of any state in the nation. Combine that with Governor Kathy Hochul's shaky standing, she's among the 10 least popular governors in America, and suddenly Democrats are looking vulnerable. Hochul is facing internal pressure, too. Her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, is challenging her in the Democratic primary. But so far, polling shows Hochul with a clear advantage. On the Republican side, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has strongly hinted she'll run in 2026, though she's holding off on a formal announcement until after November. With Congressman Mike Lawler running for re-election to the House, the GOP nomination is Stefanik's if she wants it. Whether Stefanik can run a strong statewide campaign is still an open question. But Republicans have reason for optimism. Back in 2022, little-known Congressman Lee Zeldin came within 7 points of Hochul, earning more raw votes than any Republican in New York since 1970, and posting the party's best percentage since 2002. That said, this is still New York. Republicans haven't won a major statewide race in over 20 years, and Kamala Harris carried the state by 12.5 points in 2024. And at least for now, Democrats remain favored with an 81% chance of holding on. So like Rhode Island, New York stays in the likely Democratic column. Moving east, both Vermont and New Hampshire elect their governors to 2-year terms. And interestingly, these races have leaned Republican far more often than their federal contests. In fact, Democrats have won virtually every federal election in both states over the past 20 years, with just one exception, Kelly Ayotte's U.S. Senate win in 2010. Now, Ayotte is back running for re-election as governor of New Hampshire after a huge showing last November. She won the governorship by 9 points, even as Kamala Harris carried the state by 3. All 3 major forecasters rate New Hampshire at least likely Republican, and Kalshi's markets give the GOP a 67% chance of holding the seat. That's good enough for a lean Republican rating on our map. Then there's Vermont, by many measures the bluest state in the country, but home to America's most popular governor, Republican Phil Scott. According to Morning Consult, 72% of Vermonters approve of his job performance. Just last November, he won re-election by more than 50 points, even as Kamala Harris carried the state by 32. The only question is whether Scott runs again. He hasn't announced a 6th-term bid yet, and that uncertainty has pulled GOP odds down to 71% on Kalshi. If he jumps in, expect that number to shoot past 90%. But if he retires, Democrats instantly become the favorites. For now, Vermont is rated likely Republican on our map. Finally, in Maine, Democratic Governor Janet Mills is term limited, and the primary to replace her is already crowded. Secretary of State Shenna Bellows, former state Senate President Troy Jackson, Angus King III, son of Senator Angus King, and Hannah Pingree, daughter of Congresswoman Chellie Pingree, have all jumped in. Each has raised more than $400,000, setting up a highly competitive Democratic primary. Whoever emerges will be favored in November. Maine leans Democratic by about 4 points, and 2026 should be a favorable environment for the party. The odds support that notion, with Democrats holding an 81% chance of victory. Good for a likely Democratic rating on the map. And with that, here's our final tally. Republicans at 18 seats, Democrats at 17, and one toss-up in Georgia. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Big shout out to my channel members. Names are in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out more of my content here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. EP out.